Hey folks, Quilly18 here, and welcome to another episode of our tutorial for Stellaris Console Edition for complete beginners. And in this episode, we are going to start by taking a look at sectors and core systems. This is something that the phrases have come up a few times, and I've been like, we're going to talk about this later. Well, today is the day for that. This is a very important topic for the sort of like mid-game that we have entered in over here. So I've played a little bit between episodes. You can see I have 6 planets over in the outliner, and I've also got a few warnings in red on my screen. If I go to the top of the screen, you can see we're running negative energy credits. Okay, well, I mean, that happens sometimes, but it would be nice to fix. Well, the big reason that I'm running negative energy credits is if I go over here, I am over my limit of directly controlled colonized systems. What's going on with that? Well, we've seen the word core systems a few times when we were setting up our empire. So there's certain empire picks that you can make that change how many core systems you're allowed to have. There's also various, technologies and other things that can change the number of core systems you have available to yourself. So core systems is the limit of these directly controlled colonized systems. At this point, I have colonies in 6 different systems, but my bureaucracy level is only allowing me to directly manage 4 of them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create sectors to help manage our sprawling empire. Now, this is perfectly fine. This is something that's just going to happen. As you grow, your empire is going to grow bigger and bigger, and your bureaucracy is just going to have to be adjusted to compensate for that. You can go over your limit and stay there if you want, but you can see here, my empire influence gain and energy generation are both reduced by 20%. Influence is a very valuable thing. I'd rather not, lose out on some of that. And in particular, I am losing energy credits per month right now because I have too many directly controlled systems. So you can see those warnings at the top. You can also see a warning at the bottom here, too many colonized system. Now, if I click A while this warning at the bottom is selected, it'll open up the sectors list. Likewise, if I go over to the directly controlled systems over here and click A, it'll also open this page. You can always get to this page as well from the left-hand screen. If we go down to cosmography, this is all known planets as well as able to manage sectors. The first tab, this is all of our planets. The third tab is the expansion planner for making new colonies, but this middle one is our sectors. So a sector is a semi-autonomous area in your empire. It's still part of your empire. It doesn't spawn a new empire. It's not a vassal. It's very much within your space. However, you are giving up manual control over the tiles on the planets within this sector. Now, it's worth noting that this limit over here, this limit of 4 directly controlled systems, is the keyword is system here. You're not limited in terms of number of planets, it's number of systems. For example, if you somehow found a system where you colonized 5 planets within that system would still only count as 1 towards your limit. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take, if we want to be as efficient as possible, we want to take 2 of our systems that are currently colonized and put them within sectors. We can have each one be their own individual sector. That's probably going to be a little too fiddly. What we're going to want to do, I think, in this case, is we're going to want to put 2 of the systems within their own sector. So let's go back over here. We're on the sector tab, and we can hit X to create a new sector. You can see that at the bottom. So I'm going to hit X here to create a new sector. And then you can see these icons pop up. What's the deal with this? Well, first of all, we have to choose the system that will be the capital of the new sector. Now, part of me was like, ooh, maybe this hunter system over here, it's a little further away from the rest of the core. That might be a good place to make a new sector, but it's only got the one colonized system, and really we have to put 2 within a sector. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 2 systems. The system with Quill Rocks is our planet. This is Atau, and then this system here with Ilforb. So both of these are colonized. Let's go ahead and make those into a sector. So first, I'm going to click on, say, this system. It doesn't matter which system I do first. It says it'll make Quill Rocks its capital. I don't think that has any true impact on any game mechanics. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it makes no difference. So I'm going to click here. We're going to create a new sector. Boom. It's going to be called the Quill Rocks sector. We can rename this if we want, but I don't know, I kind of like it. And then what I'm going to do is, and you can see already at the top right of the screen, I'm at 5 of 4 instead of 6 of 4. So I'm going to add the Il4 system to this. Boom. So I'm now at 4 of 4. You can see my energy is no longer negative because I've lost that 20% penalty. I'm now making energy again. And we can keep adding systems to this. We can add uncolonized systems to this sector if we want. The more stuff we add to this sector, the more the sector will have to play with. For example, the Tethel system over here generates 4 minerals and 1 science. I'm going to go and add it to the sector. Now, why did I do that? Mostly because I didn't like the shape of the sector. I want it to be a little bit more like roundish or squarish here, as opposed to a weird sort of concave thing. Like, seriously, it was just a cosmetic thing from my point of view. But it's also going to show you that you can add more things here. Once you add a system to a sector, you can remove a system from a sector, but it costs you influence. You can see at the bottom right of the screen here, it would cost us 25 influence to do. It is free to add systems to a sector, but it costs you money to remove. So try not to make a mistake, because it kind of gets annoying if you do that. I'm now going to hit B to get out of the sector management mode. So we now have a sector. If I back out here, so the sector tab, see it's not empty, and if we select this sector, we get this screen over here. So on this screen, we've got a lot going on, but it's actually, it's fairly easy to work with. We've got some buttons over here on the left. We can manage a sector. This brings us back to this screen where we can add and or remove systems from the sector. Okay, that's good. We can rename the sector if we don't like Quill Rocks as the name, but I'm a big fan of it. We can delete the sector, although it will cost us influence to do that. And we can also change the leader. What's the deal here? Well, sectors can have governors, and governors give bonuses to all the planets within the sector. You will want, absolutely 100%, you will want governors on all your sectors, because it gives all the planets in the sector a really nice boost. So I'm going to go to change leader here. We have a governor at our capital, but we're going to recruit a new leader here in the governor section, and we'll take a look. So these eager guys are just slightly cheaper to recruit. That's not too impressive. Environmental engineer gives a discount to clearing blockers. Oh, that's kind of nice. Adaptable, you gain XP a little bit faster. I mean, faster experience gain is great because your governors will get higher levels, and the higher level a governor is, the more bonuses you get. But I think I'm going to go with this fella over here, and there's a couple of reasons. I don't know how many blockers there are to remove still on the 2 planets within the sector, so the environmental engineer may not matter too much. But what I like about this guy is he's the youngest of all the candidates, and that means he will likely be governor longer. He'll have he'll live longer, therefore have more opportunity to level up, as well as once he gets to level 5, hopefully he'll live nice and long after getting to level 5, and therefore give us his bonuses for longer. So I'll go ahead and recruit him, so he's available. So I'm going to select him. There we go. He's now the governor of this district, and he's giving bonuses. Cool. I'm going to ignore the stuff in the middle. I'm going to go all the way to the right here, to the sector focus. This is where you tell your governor what you would like this governor to focus on building on the planets in his sector. By default, it's balanced, but you can have him focus on agriculture, industrial, so that would be lots of mineral production, research focus, or financial focus, i.e. make lots and lots of energy for us. I have to say, oftentimes, because in the early game, money's kind of tight, a lot of times, my first sector ends up being financial focus, but maybe that's just the nature of the way I play. Maybe you won't need any extra energy. But often my first one gets to be financial, and then after that, I tend to make a lot of research-focused ones. It's perfectly fine to leave it balanced, though. It'll try to do a little bit of everything, which might be also good for your very first one. In the middle, what you're doing here is you're setting up what kind of actions this sector is allowed to take. For example, can this sector build military stations? Yes or no? Is it allowed to do various space construction? Is it allowed to colonize planets within its sector? Respect tile resources. You remember when we were working on the tiles on a planet. Let me go and open a random planet here. So this tile here that I've got selected, it has 1 mineral on it. If I were to build a building that produces something other than minerals, I'll get a warning. Oh, by the way, this is going to suppress the minerals. Are you sure you want to do that? Well, if in your sector, sector screen over here, if in your sector you keep respect tile resources on, the governor will never put a building on a tile that will remove its base production. You might want this on, you might not want this on, depending on how much you want to focus the sector. If you want a sector to be like, listen, all I want you to do is build research labs. I don't care if it means stepping on minerals or food or whatever, just build research labs. Then you can turn this off and, set a focus or something like that if you would like. Next up here, redevelopment. This determines if the governor is allowed to replace buildings. So replace one building with a different type of building. A governor will always upgrade buildings if there's a new version of a building that comes out that's better. That's fine. But this says, can you change a mine into an energy station if for some reason you decide that you need that better? So you can leave that on or not. And then finally there's build robots. Now, we haven't looked at robots in this tutorial, mostly because we're playing a spiritualist race, and the spiritualists don't tend to like robots. But robots work quite interestingly. Let's go to one of our existing planets. If we had unlocked the technology to build robots, on this tile here that's empty, now, you know, you've got population, right? A bunch of these tiles have people work on it. This tile here has a unit of population that is growing. It's at 68 of 73. It's nearly done growing. This empty tile, if I had robots available, I could click on this tile and tell us to start building a robot on this tile. Robots are a unit of population. They don't grow naturally. You have to spend resources, I think it's minerals and energy, to build a robot. It takes a little bit of time to build it, but once it's built, it acts exactly like a unit of population. And as your technology gets better and better, your robots get smarter and smarter, and at some point they get smart enough to start demanding equal rights. But I'm going to leave that as an interesting exercise for you to discover on one of your playthroughs. It is super worthwhile, though. It's really cool. Anyway, so you can choose whether or not a district is, or sector is allowed to build robots. If you want a sector to really just take care of itself, just go and like turn all these things on. That's totally okay. You might want to enable military stations on and off, or space construction on and off. Oftentimes I will leave these two blank, because to me it's like building space stuff, that's my responsibility. But by doing this, you tell, and maybe you can turn off colonize, I suppose. But with these three, the sector really will just build stuff however it feels is the best. I guess you could turn this off too. That's kind of arbitrary. Whether you have redevelopment on or off will really be mostly important if you switch. Let's say you were agricultural focus and then you decide you want to go to industrial focus. With redevelopment turned on, then it'll probably bulldoze a bunch of farms, replace them with mines. But there's no reason you couldn't just turn all this on. You can even turn off the respect tile resources if you want. It's up to you. Anyway, so there's that. Let's go over here. So any unity, science, or food that a sector produces is counted as part of the entire empire's output. So you see it does 5 physics research, right? The physics icon plus 5. That gets added to my pool of physics research directly. Energy and minerals are slightly different. The sector, you can set how much energy and minerals the sector keeps for itself versus going to the empire. For example, this is a contribution. If I set minerals to none over here, every mineral that a sector is producing, it's keeping for itself. It's contributing none of it to the empire itself. And you can see that a little bit over on the right-hand side. This is the sector stockpile. This is how much stuff the sector has saved up for its own production. And in fact, I have tons of minerals sitting in my bank. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give the sector 1,000 minerals so it can start spending those minerals on its own construction. And it's making 17 minerals per month that it's adding to its own stockpile that it will then use to purchase its own buildings. But what I could do is I could set it all the way up to 75%. So in this case, 75% of the minerals the sector produces goes to the empire instead of keeping it for yourself. So you can see it's only stockpiling 4 per month. But you can also see the sector output changes from 0 minerals all the way up to 12 minerals over here. So they get divided different ways. Same thing with the energy credits. So if I set this to none, the sector tries to keep all of its energy credits to itself to pay for its building maintenance. And you can see here, actually the sector is currently having problems with money. So I might go ahead and give it a little bit of energy so that it doesn't go bankrupt. If it's a new sector and there's a lot of development to happen in the sector, you could go like none and none. This would let the sector keep all of its own stuff, and what would happen in this case is it would, hopefully be able to spend a lot of this to develop itself. As a sector gets fully developed and then it's just stockpiling stuff without spending anything, you might want to bring this all the way up to maybe 75 so that your main empire gets more resources. If your main empire is having problems with money or minerals, and you really are desperate to get some, and your sectors are just stockpiling tons of them and not really doing anything with it, you can drain a sector of 75% of its resources. By default, this costs 100 influence to do. So you would take 75% of the stuff out of the sector, bring it back in your empire stockpile. The remaining 25% would just stay in the sector. It's not lost or anything, but it costs you influence to do this. One thing I'm not sure about in this version of Stellaris, because it has changed a little bit from patch to patch, and I don't know exactly what the rule will be in this particular version. If you are in a defensive war, if someone has declared war on you, it may not take influence for you to drain sectors. If you get declared on and you really need resources to build ships, check to see if you can drain sectors without having to spend a bajillion influence to do it. You might be able to do that. Anyway, that is the sector screen. Now that I have a sector, so let's say, okay, I'm going to put you on balance focus, and yeah, I'll leave all this stuff on. That's going to be okay. And for now, keep all your resources for yourself so you can grow. Now that I have this sector, if I go, you can see in the outliner, I only have 4 planets listed here because the planets in my sectors are no longer in the outliner. I can still go and visit one of these planets. So let's say I decide to visit the planet of Quill Rocks over here. I can still take a look at it, and there's certain things I can do. I can run edicts, for example, if I wanted to. I could change the leaders around. What I can't do, I can move some of the population, right? So over here, I can make some changes to some of the population options. What I can't do is build a planet, or sorry, build a building, right? Cannot manage planet tiles in the sector. So you still have some control and some things you don't. You still have control of the spaceport if you want to go and queue up like ships and stuff over here. If you build the spaceport, upgrade the spaceport, you still have full control over that if you want to. You can build armies on this planet, and you can take a look at some of the combat and stuff like that. So you can't interact with the tiles as much, but everything else you can do. That includes if, let's say there were still some resources here. Let's say I hadn't built the mines in the system. I could still send a construction ship here to go and build space mines and various things like that. So the sectors take care of the tiles basically on the planet. Everything else you still have basically full access for, because you're still the emperor. You just, have delegated out the work of the tiles, and that does make it a lot easier to manage a much bigger empire. By the end of things, you will probably have more than one sector. Your sectors may be of various sizes. You could have a very big sector that has many planets in it, and maybe a lot of these uncolonized systems might be part of your sectors. You might have a lot of tiny little sectors. Everyone's got their sort of own flavor there. Of course, most likely, if you play fairly well and carefully, most likely any planets you control directly will probably be somewhat more efficient. Like, you'll use your great big giant human brain to be as effective as possible with the tiles, and also tune what you build on each tile to be exactly perfect for what your needs are there. The sector governor can't possibly be as good as you, but it will do a pretty good job, and it saves you a lot of trouble. So what I want to do here, this is our final episode of this tutorial. What I want to do is take one final look at all the menu options on the left-hand side to make sure that we've talked about everything. So in the first option on the left-hand side, the government screen, we've got 3 tabs over here we haven't really looked at. So this is our government. This is our current ruler. We've got Emperor Verpin. Each one of your rulers has various traits, and this can affect your gameplay. So this ruler has deep connections, so I have +1 monthly influence. That's really good. And he's an expansionist, so building frontier outposts is cheaper, and the influence cost to create new colonies is discounted. These are really nice traits. Really like having that. Depending on your government, if you're a democracy, then you'll have an election every 10 years, all the way up to if you're a dictatorship or a monarchy, then you only change your leaders whenever your leader dies. Each ruler will have different traits, and that might affect how you play a little bit. We've got a reminder here of our ethics that we chose all the way back in episode 1. We are xenophiles, militarists, and spiritualists. These will generally be static throughout the game, but we do have our civics over here as well. So we have our cutthroat politics, which is even more monthly influence, and our warrior culture over here. These can actually change, as well as our election scheme over here. So we're imperial. I guess because we're imperial, we have an heir to the throne. So our next leader would be Verpin Badir over here, who's got architectural sense, and he's an industrialist. We can go over here, and these are modifiers. These are permanent buffs that are currently underway. Cosmic ray catalysts, extra-dimensional insights, and prismatic lenses. These are things that happen because of decisions I made during gameplays, events that popped up and decisions I made. Some of them are timed. For example, extra-dimensional insights over here will expire in a certain number of days. I don't believe you saw any of these. I think a lot of this happened between episodes, and you'll have a different set of these bonuses. So there's this reform government button. If we hit this allows us to change quite a few things about our empire. We can, if we go to the top here, change our election scheme. We can move from an imperial government, a sort of monarchy, and maybe we decide to be democratic. We could totally do that. So I'll click that, changes what civics. Let's say I decide, oh, I don't want a warrior culture anymore. Instead, I'm going to go with citizen service. You can totally do this. You can change your government. But note, it costs a ton of influence to do any of this. It's 250 influence to reform your government. After you've done your picks, you hit the reform button over here, and it would cost us a ton of influence. I'm going to just say no to that. But you can change your government if you're not pleased with it, absolutely. We got a budget screen over here. There's nothing for us to do on the screen, but we can see a nice little breakdown of everything. Like, where's all our money going? Ooh, a lot of it is maintaining our stations. Every mining station and research station you build costs you money to maintain. It's generally still a good idea to build all those because, first of all, a lot of your mining stations might be mining energy, so they pay for themselves. Minerals are still needed to expand your empire. So the science stations are pretty good for, you know, increasing your technology. So hopefully you can make more money. It's just, you know, that's just the way it's going to be. Same thing with the buildings. Like, be aware that there's maintenance on buildings and you might want to, you know, delay some of your upgrades because usually the higher level buildings cost more energy. So mining network 1s, I think, cost 1 energy per month. I think mining networks 2 cost 1.5 per month. So that's one of the reasons I tend to prioritize getting the better energy power plants as early as possible so that I don't go broke while trying to upgrade everything else. And you can see here we might have some various modifiers to different cost things. We've got a demographic screen over here so we can see our actual race. So our primary race here are raw tech. We can remind ourselves of what our states are over here. We can take a look at our species as well and what we've got. And if we had homeworlds that belong to other people, we could make vassal empires here. So a vassal is not part of your empire. It's not like a sector. The sector is still part of our empire. A vassal is not. It's its own independent government. However, it bends the knee to you in every way. It can't do its own diplomacy. It has to follow you into war, etc., etc., etc. So, you know, it's sort of like a baby brother that just follows you around everywhere and does everything you have to say, or everything you say. So we've got that. Let's go to the next screen. Contacts over here, just one tab. This is where you can see every species that you have met in the game. That includes, I have met some these feudal realms over here. This is not a real empire. This is a primitive empire, so we can't actually interact with them, but we can see how people feel like. You can filter this out as well. Let's say we only want to see real empires. There we go. So we can filter it out this way and see what the situation is just by clicking those buttons. Next up, we've got the situation log. So this is really handy. This will keep track of anything that's currently ongoing. This can include things like places that you can do research. Like I can mount a deep sea expedition on a particular planet. What I have to do is I have to get a science ship over there that has a scientist of at least level 3 in orbit to be able to do that. I can click look at, it'll zoom in over here. Okay, so let's say if I want to do this, I'm going to grab one of my science ships. Say you, hey, you're level 5, that's at least level 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, I'm just going to click on the planet and say research project. There we go. So this science ship will make his way over here and take a look at that particular expedition and see what we can find. And I've got a few other events going on. The Shrine to the Old Gods, not going to spoil too much of that. This is a fun mission that you get some games, which is to go and collect all these different species. Oh, I've only got one missing, so hopefully I'll take care of that. Oh, it's actually being worked on here. 34 days is going to finish. The alien species procurement, which I think will give me a bunch of society research as a reward, which is nice. Victory screen over here. You know, I'm 12% of the way towards a domination victory. Let's not worry about that for now. Technology screen, so we know that we can research things. You can change your research that you're working on if you want. It will remember how much research. So let's say I change from quantum energy states, although you can see I prioritize those power plant upgrades. Very nice. But let's say I was like, you know what? I'm going to war. I really need the next level of lasers, and I do that. I can do it. My laser research starts at 0. But it doesn't forget my quantum theory. Whenever it comes up again, and it might not, when I finish the lasers, it might not show me quantum theory right away, but whenever it comes up again, it will still have, sorry. Oh! No, it did move away. I don't have my, oh, that's funny. Okay, so yeah, if I wanted to start researching my power plants again, I guess I'd have to wait for it to come up again. But it would remember our progress. Just like I have partial progress towards fusion power and mining drone lasers, this is from me exploring the debris of us fighting those mining drones. Let me research fusion power here because it's fairly cheap at 640. We have partial research going on for it, so it'll be the fastest to finish, and that'll refresh my little list. You can change your scientists. And what you can also do is you can look at all the texts you've researched. I don't tend to do this very often, but you can. And then finally, strategic resources. I have access to urantic crystals. I don't remember where they were. I feel like, were they up here? Yeah, right over here. This system has urantic crystals in it. Right over here. And because we're working this planet, I got a mining base, well, actually a science base over here. I've got access to urantic crystals, and that is giving me all my energy weapons do 15% bonus damage. Having extras of these doesn't make a difference. I don't think it matters how many of these you have. If you have more than one, you can trade them away for money and things like that, which is pretty cool. Although, you know, maybe don't trade them to someone you're going to go to war with. Well, I think once the war starts, it probably breaks off that trade deal, so maybe it's fine. So we were just looking at the cosmography panel, right? These are all the planets we control. It's quite nice. On the right, you can see the modules on your starbase. If ever you see like a blank spot, like these tiles are all locked, but if there was a blank hole in those modules on the right, then you might be like, oh, hold on, I'm going to come over here and, yeah, manage the spaceport and make sure, oh, that I've got all the components filled. Why is it not showing me? I think that module screen is not correct, because it's showing me that I have the solar panels and everything else is locked. But it's not locked. I can build something else. I think that's a bit of a visual bug. I am playing on a pre-release version. By the time it gets in your hands, maybe that will be different. Interesting. Sectors list, expansion planner. So again, this is all the planets you can colonize. Well, that are colonizable, although some of them you can't colonize because they're probably in someone else's territory. So this button for is colonizable is very handy. We've looked at that before though. Society screen. So we've got our traditions here. So traditions are very cool. As you accrue unity, and you can look at the top of the screen here, there's a progress meter that predicts how long before you get your next tradition. The more unity you produce, the faster you will get these. They have tons of traits. I have now finished the discovery tree over here, which is great. By finishing it, all my research speed gets increased by 10%, which is amazing. Again, discovery really strong, expansion really strong as well early on. The next thing I'd probably do in this game actually is I'd probably go diplomacy, because one of the things you can do with once you unlock diplomacy over here is get the Federation. This allows you to form federations with other species, and then as a federation it's like this giant glorious alliance between you and possibly many species in one mutual alliance. So you could have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different empires within the Federation. You guys go to war together. Whether one of you gets attacked or someone else wants to start a war, you do it together. If someone gets attacked, everyone just jumps in and defends it. If someone wants to go to war, there is a vote. So in a federation, you might try to start a war and one of your members says, no, I don't want to fight, in which case you don't get to fight. The war declaration has to be unanimous, which can be a little tricksy at times, but it is a very powerful defensive alliance. Also, you can win the game if your federation as a whole controls, a significant portion of space. So you can just win the game by keep bringing people into the federation, and once you've got enough members, you just win. It's amazing. Diplomatic victory. So yeah, there's some really good stuff in diplomacy here. Policies, so we've looked at a little bit. Do note, as you get more technologies, and depending on various government things and stuff, different options might present themselves in here, and you can make a lot of choices. Presentience over here, or oops, that's the wrong button. Presentience is quite interesting. So these are for things that are simple animals. Do you tolerate them or exterminate them? Again, different picks are available depending on your particular government and ethics. And these edicts over here, these cost influence per month to maintain. They are very powerful. You generally, most of the influence you're going to spend is going to be to expand your empire, right? Because colonies take influence, frontier outposts take influence. But if you have some to spare, these are really, really quite strong. Look at this, droning optimization. This is something I got from those ancient mining drones. If I do this, I just get 10% more minerals per month. That is really strong, but can I afford to spend the influence? Well, maybe I can, maybe I can't. Next screen, we've got the people screen over here. So this includes our leader list. You do have a cap on how many leaders you can have. In the top right corner of the screen there, you can see I'm at 10 of 12. Different government picks, different technologies, and so on can give you a higher capacity of leaders. So if you're at your capacity, you can't recruit anyone else. There are 4 leader categories. Governors, which you can always have one governor on your own personal home world, your capital world, and in addition to that, you can have one governor in each one of your sectors, which we just looked at. You got your scientists. These are used both for researching, so you're going to want 3 scientists for your core research, and in addition to that, you're going to want 1 scientist per science ship. You have your admirals. They can control fleets and give bonuses to all your ships. The higher their star ranking, the more bonuses to your ships, in addition to whatever traits they happen to have. So for example, this guy's got gale speed, so he's got the evasion, sublight, and combat speed boosts, and he's also got fleet logistician, which is a ship upkeep. As these guys get promoted, they can get new traits. So I think he started with just gale speed, and then when he gained more experience, he developed the fleet logistician, which is kind of nice. Generals, they command your armies, your ground troops, and give a bonus to your ground troops. If you are in a government form that has elections, okay, let's say you're a democracy and you have an election every 10 years, the people running for elections can be any of these leaders. So what can happen sometimes, and this can be a little confusing at first, is an election can happen and all of a sudden your physics research is now your governor. So now you no longer have a physics researcher. And you're like, well, he didn't die. What happened? No, he got elected. So now you have to recruit a new scientist to work that slot. We've got our faction list over here. So this is something we haven't looked at because early on you don't really have factions. Factions start to pop up over time. And what it does is it represents people with certain specific philosophies. So for example, the Alien Justice Party here is filled with populations that are xenophiles. Xenophiles are people who love other aliens, and these guys here are fanatic xenophiles, basically. They love aliens like super lots. And so you've got different things. So this Alien Justice Party currently has a happiness of 48%. It has an attraction rating of 16. This is how likely it is to pull new people into the faction. And then how many pops are within this empire? Now, these pops actually exist. There are 6 pops on Adnor. That's our capital. If I were to go to Adnor in the list over here and look through the pops, I think I have to oh yeah, there we go. This guy here, you see that symbol? So the pop, just under this pop's portrait, you see it's that little flag? This pop is someone who's part of the that alien rights faction. Does it show it on this screen? No, but this pop is part of that faction. And there you go. So that pop's happiness is affected by this particular faction. So the more members you have in a faction, the more power they have. Factions give you influence. If a faction is happy, you will get bonus influence. So it's really nice. And the amount of influence a faction can give is based on its size. So big factions, you want to keep them happy so that they give you lots and lots of influence. You do have a few options. You can embrace a faction. If you do that, it costs you a ton of influence. You can see 250 here. But it would change our government to be more xenophilic, to be even more we love aliens all the time. I believe it would make it fanatic xenophiles. We can also suppress a faction. It makes it unhappy, but it will try to reduce the number of people that join this faction. So you can sort of manipulate a little bit how likely they are to people are likely to join these factions. We can get a list here. This is our population breakdown of various traits that our population has. So down here, these are the issues that they have. These are the things that are making them happy or unhappy. So the xenophiles are really happy that I recently met some aliens. That makes them happier. I welcome all refugees. They are unhappy though because of indirect xenology. So right now, okay, so these guys want a passive study stance on native interference. What does that mean? Let's say I pop over to my society and we look at our policies. Native interference right over here. When it comes to primitive societies, right? And we've seen a couple. We don't have any within our borders, but we've seen a couple. We saw one that was, say, in the Renaissance. We can build orbital observation stations, which gives us tons of society research. And we can choose how those orbital stations work. On a case-by-case basis, each individual station, we can choose what it does. A passive study, they try to stay hidden, they don't interfere at all. An active study, they might actually go and try to kidnap people and poke around with them and see what's going on. We can try to enlighten the species, we can try to replace the species, there's different things like that. Right now, active study is allowed. The xenophile faction would prefer us to set it to only passive study. We're going to pass a law so that if we ever build an observation base, we don't have any right now, but if we ever build one, we're only allowed to do passive study and not actually interfere with the natives. So I'm going to change the law to that. We can't change it for another 10 years, but I'm going to change the law. And now, if I go take a look at the faction, they're incredibly happy. So instead of having minus 10% happiness, they have plus 5% happiness. That's a 15-point swing. We went from 48% to 63 happiness over here. Now, anything with a green dot to the left of its name means it's boosting happiness. Anything with a red dot was bringing it down. So that used to be a red dot, bringing it down. Things with yellow dots are things that, like, they don't bother, it doesn't bother them. If we were to enable purging, these guys would become unhappy. Because we don't allow purging, they're not unhappy. It doesn't make them happy. It's just like they're not getting cranky. So sometimes there's like that. Sometimes there's sort of an in-between. So we have not adopted the diplomatic traditions, right? The traditions we were just looking at over here. Traditions over here. So diplomatic traditions I have not adopted yet because I don't have the points for it. They're not upset because I haven't adopted it, right? It's in yellow, so we don't have a penalty. But if we were to adopt diplomatic traditions, these guys would become even happier, which is cool. And note, this faction is now giving me 1.9 influence per month. That's huge. We know how precious influence is. That is massive. Anything we can do about the Order of the Burning Star? These guys here are militarists. So they're happy because of my current, we're building frontier outposts, we're expanding our borders, they're happy about that. They would like us to be a rival of a neighboring empire. We actually don't have a neighboring empire. Like, we have rivals, but we don't technically touch any of them. If we did, then that would become happy and we'd get even more influence. So anyway, factions. Awesome, awesome, awesome mechanic in Stellaris. Try to keep them a little bit happy so that you get influence. Also, if they're unhappy, then you can get really cranky people, and that can be dangerous. Here's a list of all species in the entire galaxy. So you can take a look at them, which is cool, including some pre-sentients. You can filter this to only show species within your borders. We actually have some pre-sentient species within our borders over here. The mutics. These are pre-sentient, so, I mean, they're sort of animalist level of intelligence. If we get the right technology, we can uplift them, make them sentient, and they would be like a fully sentient, smart species within our empire. We would need a technology for that, but it's cool. You can set your rights for every species individually. So these guys here just count as slaves effectively. We could change those if we wanted. So residents, they're allowed to live in our borders. Full citizenship, they've got 100% rights as everyone else. Some governments can do caste systems. Their living standards, these guys have non-existent because, yeah, they're so primitive it doesn't matter. If we compare that to our base species and our rights, full citizenship, decent living standards, we can bring that up. We can go to social welfare, right? If we go to social welfare, then their happiness increases by 10%. They use more consumer goods, so they will consume more of our minerals because we're giving them more stuff, but they'd be a lot happier. We go to impoverished, so they use less stuff because the default of decent living standards is 1 consumer good per pop. If we go to impoverished, it's 0.75 consumer goods per pop, but penalty to happiness. You can manipulate that per species. You can also set your default. There's your default over here for all your species, and then after that, you can customize individual ones. So there's a lot of stuff you can do here, especially if you do get more species in here, and once you do genetic modification, and again, maybe you're a race of slavery, tons of stuff. We've looked at the ship designer over here. Notice there's a second tab here that says Federation. I can't move to it, but if we had a Federation, we'd be able to design the ships that Federation members can build that operate as a Federation fleet. Whoever's the Federation president controls the Federation fleet. Federation ships can be built using any of the technology from any of the Federation members, which means your Federation ships might be more advanced than your own ships, which is kind of cool. If we were at war, we'd have a view to look at all the wars we're involved in over here. If we were in a Federation, we can do it in this menu. And then finally, we've got map modes, which let us change our map settings. This chooses what we see. We can toggle detailed map mode on. If we do that, we've got a lot more information always on. It's fairly noisy. It shows you the production of every system, whether it's been improved or not. It shows you sensor radius. These sensor radiuses are kind of cool. So every planet's got a sensor radius. Every ship, like a ship over here, has got one as well, depending on what sensors are installed. So you can sort of tell what your vision is. I think that's too noisy to play in, so we'll toggle that off. You can decide whether or not sectors show up. The sector name is still there, but you can choose whether or not you see the borders. Whether you see the hyperlanes. Personally, I think you should. I think if you have them off and you select a ship, no, task force, it still doesn't show us the lines. It does show us the sensor radius when you've got a ship selected. But anyway, I think you want to leave the hyperspace lanes on. Whether you see... then there's the main coloring mode. So we're in Empire map mode over here. This colors every piece of space depending on which empire controls it. If we go to diplomatic map mode, what it does is coloring things based on how much people like us. So you can see we've got a couple of friends, the Feral Star Concordate and the United Unisons Council, which is sort of spread out a little bit weirdly. They like us. The Civics Cost Star Republic don't like us because they're in red over there. So you can do that. That's diplomatic map mode. That shows our diplomatic relation. So these green people we have defensive pacts with, the red people we are rivals with. If we go to opinion map mode, then it again tunes the color based on how much they like us, which here the overlap's going to be pretty much the same. AI attitude, colored based on their AI attitude towards the selected empire, which is us. Different AIs will have somewhat different ways of interacting. It's a little bit of overlap between the diplomatic and opinion. And then neighbor map mode over here, which empires are considered to be your own empire's neighbor. So, that's interesting. Turns out the Feral Star Concordate are considered our neighbor. So if we were to rival them, that would make the militarists happy. But we're going to be friends with them, so we're not going to do that. Generally speaking, you're going to stay in Empire map mode. However, I will say this: when you're at war, so yeah, I was saying red. These guys are not red; they're sort of brownish. They don't like us. Brownish or orangish, depending on the vision border over here. They don't like us. We don't have any good diplomatic relations. We're rivaled with them, yada, yada, yada. I think these purple people, we really don't care about. They're not our rivals. We have nothing going on. If we were at war with someone, then the people we're at war with would be bright red, just like this. So if you're at war and you're not sure what space is controlled by your enemies, flip to the diplomatic map mode and you'll see them very, very clearly in red. Really handy. But generally speaking, you're going to keep it in Empire map mode over here. So, makes it easy to see which empire is which. And there you have it. I think we've done it. I think we've covered everything over the course of these 5 episodes. To play the game. It's one of these things, when you start playing, everything becomes very, very, very intuitive, but at the same time, there's always more stuff to discover. In particular, the crazy events and crazy technologies that are available in the game. There's just so many different things that happen. Wait until you get into genetic manipulation of your species, or building robots and then tuning how the robots work. It's like, what? That's crazy sauce. Oh, here, galactic bureaucracy. See? +1 core sectors. If you want to be able to control as much land as possible, directly as possible, galactic bureaucracy will help. There were, what screen am I looking at? Government screen. And if we go here, reform, some of these picks, is it efficient bureaucracy? +2 core systems. If you really, really want to control everything directly, you can. I believe if you're pacifist, you also get more core sectors. I might be wrong about that. I don't remember. You'll have to see. But you can do it. The thing is, I kind of like sectors. I think it's a cool system. I like being an emperor and sort of delegating jobs, which is what sectors are. Anyway, folks, I hope you find this useful. The next step, if you want to know more about Stellaris, is watch some Let's Plays. Keep in mind, most of the Let's Plays you'll find on the interwebs will be for the PC version of Stellaris, because it's been out a little bit longer. And also, depending on what videos you find, Stellaris might look a fair bit different, because one of the things Paradox does is they are constantly working on and improving their products continuously. So from patch to patch and expansion to expansion, things can change pretty dramatically. So keep that in mind if you do watch some Let's Plays, but still, you'll probably find them very, very, very educational as you go on. That is it for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, folks. Bye-bye.